Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. We're always looking for great guests for all of the Security Weekly shows. Submit your suggestions by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW368 if you want to follow along and look at my snarky comments as we go through the news, or for links to anything that we're talking about today. All right, welcome Tyler and Darwin. We got a few extra co-hosts with us. How are you guys doing?
Hey, bud. Good to see you.
Howdy. Dog days of the summer. We have about a couple weeks left before Hacker Summer Camp. Things are rocking and rolling, and as you'll see with this week's news, there's some pretty cool stuff and cool innovative stuff coming out. So excited to cover this week's news.
Yeah, so rewinding a little bit to last week, Darwin, it's been a while since we've had you on, but I think it was maybe 2 hours before we recorded last week that the Wiz, wait, am I thinking about a different recording?
You are.
But that's okay.
You were thinking about Sunday.
Sunday.
I've been doing. This is my 4th or 5th recording today. I did 2 ad reads today. I did an executive.
Look at this guy.
He's got Security Weekly, Irons. Yeah.
So 100%. If we have not mentioned the Wiz deal, that's what we should start with today, or the rumor, right?
Alleged.
Is there anything more?
Alleged. Yes.
23 billion.
There's been no additional news that I've seen on the topic past the 23 billion news. But I mean, that's still a lot of cake. That's still a lot of bread, eh?
Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's, I did the analysis on it. The estimate is they're just shy of 500 million ARR today, which means 23 billion would be 46x, which is unprecedented for a company to be valued at 46x. A cybersecurity company anyway.
You know what's funny? There was a very well-known VC that posted on this exact same topic on the moment that the news dropped, and he did his multiple math, which was similar to yours, ballpark similar to yours. He had him at about 35x, 40x, something like that. And he said,
it's huge.
Yeah, but you know what he said?
What?
He said, that's a normal exit. That's a good exit. That's what we should be expecting. And this is a very well-known cyber-specific VC, and I almost called him out on it because I was shocked that he would say that in today's macro mode that's a reasonable expectation. But I also don't think it's as small as maybe the world thinks it should be either. Meaning, like, what would you guys, Darwin in particular, I'd love to hear this one from you because you do a lot of analysis in this space too. Where would you say strategically, because this is a strategic acquisition, this is not a financial acquisition, so they don't necessarily have to say, hey, we have to recoup costs in X amount of months, years, whatever. There's a lot of strategic goodwill that gets wrapped into this. Where would you put the multiple in today's macro if you thought it was a correct multiple? Put you right on the spot, didn't I?
Yeah, but also it's like when I look at the security industry, there are 3 major players that over the next 10 years, if no acquisitions are made, will kind of eat the market. And that's Wiz, CrowdStrike, and Palo Alto Networks. And so can Google go out and acquire CrowdStrike? Probably not. CrowdStrike is worth, like, CrowdStrike's valuation is about 80 billion at the moment. Palo cracked 100 billion at some point earlier this year, right? And so the overall growth potential for Wiz is, I would say, over the next 5 to 10 years, I think Google would be able to I don't know that they would obviously it wouldn't generate 23 billion in revenue over the next 5-10 years off of Wiz. But I think that the price tag is justified. Given that there are so many different offerings on Wiz's platform that integrate well with Google Cloud, and then also with Mandiant and Chronicle and their Virus Total Acquisition. So 55,
So-
like anything between 40 to 55x. Like if it weren't Google has a massive bank account, big
They got over 100 billion in cash on. They got over 100 billion in cash on the coffers. They could actually go grab
Right.
CrowdStrike.
Oh wow! But then where would that leave them in terms of?
It wouldn't leave them a whole lot of arrows in the
yeah.
quiver, right? But they
Right.
could lever up. They could get some leverage on that, some debt on that, and then take a shot at it if they really wanted to. But that's not the point. So you think in the 40-ish range isn't a horrible multiple then?
No. And another thing to think about is like, look at the multiples that companies like NVIDIA are trading at, and other market leaders across different verticals, what multiples they're trading at in today's like macroeconomic environment, right? So things are interesting. I wouldn't say that Wiz is the NVIDIA of security, but
I'm going to put that on a piece of paper. I'm going to quote that.
I would put and also the last thing is when they last raised, they were looking to raise in May of this year. They were looking to raise, I don't know if that raise actually went through, 800 million. I think it did. 800 million at a $10 billion
total. Yeah.
Yep. At $10 billion valuation. I would say a good price tag for Wiz is about 15 to 20 billion.
Yeah, the last time I saw an acquisition, and this company's 4 years old, just to put everything in context here. It's a 4-year-old
That's
company.
shocking. That's so,
I don't think Duo was much older, but it was kind of a similar situation. It was a company that was just absolutely on fire, and they get acquired, I think, low 20s. It was like 22, 23, something like that.
Duo was 2.3.
Huh?
2.
Yeah.
2.3, not 20.
No, the multiple. The
Oh,
multiple.
the
is
multiple.
Like 20.
The multiple. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the revenue multiple. Yeah.
So
But
it's
we're
interesting,
still
right? When you bring in
such a smaller scale, though.
Well, so what's interesting is when you bring in the strategic question, that's always the hard part, right? Like if it's just a math problem and we're playing the private equity game, that's a totally different story. You just get in there, you crunch the numbers and pops out, here's what we're willing to pay. We're not a penny more, right? Because it's straight up financial. But when you bring in the strategic, that's when things get fuzzy and gray, and like how much can we lever this acquisition to do something else? So I'm going to give you a comp here. Meta acquired WhatsApp for 19.3 billion. And people were floored at that acquisition because it wasn't making any money. There was hardly any revenue in that model whatsoever. But what they did is it had 45 million. No, I forget how many millions or billions of daily users, right? So what they did was strategically cornered a new segment of the market and leveraged that into additional revenue streams across the board that allowed Facebook to turn that into way more of a return in stockholder market value over time. And I think that's what this play is. If Google does acquire Wiz, if this goes through and completes, it has nothing to do with the financials. It has nothing to do with the revenue.
You sell more GCP? You're using Wiz
I think you break into the cyber market as a whole and you remain a high-end, if not top 3 competitor in what could be a hundreds of billions of dollar or $1 trillion market over time. You're one of the top 3 now because you made this massive acquisition.
Right. Darwin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, what does the strategy to absorb Wiz look like? Is it solely going to be provided to GCP customers, or
because they're agnostic right now, right?
Exactly, and
I think they have to be. They have to remain agnostic. They have to.
That's the only way that it would work, right?
Right.
So that would put Google in like a very interesting position. And obviously, they have to go to market forces to be able to deploy them and sell Wiz. But what does that look like? That would be very unique, and it maybe look like Microsoft selling Defender for Endpoint, regardless of which cloud you're hosted on, right? It would just, it feels a little funky. Overall, I don't like to speculate, but I don't think that the deal will go through. I think it could just be in my newsletter. I wrote like maybe this is part of Wiz getting ready to start their IPO roadshow over the next 2 or 3 years, and having that 23 billion price tag floating around justifies a higher valuation for the IPO. But
more investor confidence.
Exactly. Yep. It's who knows? Someone's playing chess.
Yeah, I definitely don't play chess at that level. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All right. Let's move on here. Let's talk about so ThreatConnect acquired Polarity, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Polarity has been a sponsor of the show before. I think we've here at Security Weekly we've done some stuff with them before. Sam or Renee might correct me. They have longer been for our sponsors than I do, but yeah, interesting pickup here. And do a great job with the like they've got a page just dedicated to the deal rationale. Why Polarity plus ThreatConnect. So yeah.
Good for them for putting that up. You don't see that very often, that rationale type thing. You see the fluffy.
That's usually our job.
Yeah, that's usually our job. Hey, can we just read this to the audience? We'll call it our. We'll say we did the research, but usually you just see the fluffy 1+2 story, and it's usually just buzzword. Here's what they both do. Somehow it's going to be better together. Somebody put some thought into this one, and I really like it when they put the strategy out there and say, hey, here's the reality. Here's what we're tackling. Here's how we're going to tackle it. Here's what the combined value really becomes when you put these two things together. And that level of expectation setting with your audience is a great way to get adoption.
And it makes a lot of sense that Polarity went to ThreatConnect because Polarity, there's nothing else really like it in the market. It's a piece of software you install on a workstation, and you can highlight text. Like if you highlight an IP address with it, it's going to tell you stuff about that IP address. Like it'll automatically do a reverse DNS, check it against some block lists and stuff like that. Like it just, just like maybe like a dictionary check on your Mac, like you can highlight a word, right click and get without opening a web page or anything, like it'll give you a definition or a thesaurus or something like that. That's effectively what Polarity is, but for cybersecurity. I've not really seen anything else on the market like it, so it was always an interesting one. It was like, where do these guys exit? Where do they go from here?
Yeah, it is. Polarity is an extremely interesting solution. It has over 200 integrations that you could hook up across your security stack and your SaaS apps. And so when we're thinking about, and they also have a federated search feature, right? So not only do they have the OCR where you highlight a certain piece of text and it's able to spider out to all your integrations and say, here's more metadata about this EC2 instance or this EC2 instance. We can see that in your tenable findings, it actually has these vulnerability findings, and it's able to correlate and look all of that up. So in that sense, like they have the OCR feature where you highlight the text and it does all that spidering, but also the federated search where you could say like, you could search up that same information within a search box, right? When I look at ThreatConnect, it's a threat intelligence operations platform, and often threat intelligence on its own is not very actionable. It's just like a bunch of indicators of compromise.
It's something you plug into something else, right?
Exactly. And so when you merge these two companies, it just makes the threat intel so much more actionable because it's able to do all of that federated search and OCR spidering across your security stack without you having to open like 50 tabs like their marketing copy says, right? So I think this is a great match.
Probably the quickest integration post-acquisition ever, because I'm guessing Polarity probably already had a ThreatConnect integration. So yeah,
I bet.
Deal done.
Yeah.
The products all together. You're welcome.
Yeah, and to your point, how thoughtful they were in that highlighting in their press release of the acquisition, talking about the strategy, but they've also already integrated it into their the Polarity offering into their webpage, and it has talks about the use cases and things of that nature. The acquisition went public, I think 7 or 8 days ago, and to have all of this already included in the website, I think is extremely helpful for ThreatConnect customers. So I think this is just a good showcase of how to do M&A from a public standpoint.
Well, it also, if they were really thoughtful behind the scenes on what they were going to do, how they were going to do it beforehand, it takes away that, deer in the headlights when because we see it all the time, right? Like companies say, hey, we're going to get acquired or merge or whatever. And then everybody's sitting there for 9 months, 18 months, 24 months, wondering what the heck's going to happen as these two disparate companies now become one. Are the people I'm working with still going to be there? Are they going to support the product? Or are they going to kill the product? It's sort of a weird process, if you think about it from a business point of view, to hold your customers in limbo for that long. Yeah. So obviously I don't know what went on behind the scenes with ThreatConnect and Polarity, but if it was a case where they sat down, thought about it beforehand so that they could alleviate some of that, crap.
The stress,
It really says that they were thinking about their customers in the market. Because I do think, we
were in limbo for a year.
Exactly. And it leaves a really, really bad taste in customers' mouths. So this was a smart move, I think.
And then also looking at going back to the Wiz and Google acquisition rumors, how do we think Wiz customers feel? So on one hand, we have...
Especially ones that use AWS or Azure or something like that with Wiz. Do we have to switch clouds now if we want to continue using? What kind of stuff are you thinking there?
Yeah. Any additional questioning or confusion that you're bringing to security leaders at this point is it's very detrimental. So it's interesting, but good on ThreatConnect and Polarity, I would say. And what Katie mentioned highlights why it's so important to be thoughtful during M&A with your public communications. So
early in my career, I worked for a company that was PE backed that was just gobbling up local ISPs. And this is back in the days when broadband was first coming out. And they acquired 46 ISPs and 7 ILECs throughout the Southeast. It was called Duro Communications. And they were eventually bought out by Earthlink years and years later. But they basically had it down to a formula. They would go in, they'd rip out all the old stuff. They would drop in 3 boxes, like a mail, DNS, and web, for people who hosted websites with them. All Solaris servers, all Sun servers. They just had the stack. They'd come in, they'd rip and replace. And I remember Nashville.com was one of the first, ran one of the first BBSs in the country. And one of the best things about it is people had Nashville.com email addresses, and they loved their Nashville.com email addresses. And they botched something with that transfer because it was just one guy going in, just ripping and replacing, fired all the employees. And long story short, the churn was 90%, 95% because email was down for 7 months. They couldn't recover the data. It was just this huge mess. And they didn't even think about what customers loved about each of these individual local ISPs. They just ripped and replaced. And you see a lot of that churn sometimes when that happens. But so we got 2 new companies here. First one I want to talk to, a little bit out of order, is Sola Security. We talked about this last week. There is no product yet. But the founder has been given $28 million of seed money to build a product. And if you click, you got to click the link. This is a required click. The first quote that comes up is "Holy effing shit." Potential investor.
This is the future of the cybersecurity industry.
Maybe Richard Hollis had a point.
Yeah,
The best one, Adrian. The best one is "That's lovely, dear. Here's $20." That's
Great.
one of them that they're scrolling by.
Grandma Betsy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, who is the founder of Sola Security, and how do we know we're not being trolled?
He was the founder of Cider Security, which he sold
Okay.
to Apollo for 300 million.
Okay.
I don't know what he did before that, but 300 million exit, probably 18 months into building the company or whatever. I'm sure that's what's earned him this. Yeah, you get 28 million. You know, I don't care what you do with it.
You get a refund. Yeah.
Yeah. This is funny. I feel like I'm being trolled. I tried to
They
do.
don't
It does
say
feel like-
anything anywhere though. Like there's no idea what it does. It's funded by Michael Moritz and
They
S
haven't
Capital.
decided yet. They haven't decided.
That's literally the case. They haven't decided at all. They have no idea what they're doing.
Yes, correct.
That might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
One fun fact: I actually think I was listening to the press. I listened to the press release of this company. Now that I think about it, Calculus Tech released a piece on this. Michael Moritz is a legendary investor from Sequoia Capital.
Yep.
He invested from his personal money into this company. This is something that he rarely does. And so Michael Moritz is like the Michael Jordan of venture capital, essentially.
Yeah.
And him putting his personal money behind this company, it means something, right? And so I would just say, like, let's watch this space. Maybe
Which
we're not
company?
being
It's this one. It was
Sola
part of this-
Security. Yeah.
I would, Darwin, I would absolutely love to watch the space if I knew what the space was.
Yes.
Nothing to see here yet.
There's no.
You're
abs-
amazed. It is. It's
yeah,
gonna
no.
way or the next Apple glasses.
Look, you know, I have seen this a bunch of times. Yeah, Apple glasses, exactly. I've seen this a bunch of times, man. Like when a company exits for $400-500 million, half $500 million, and your angel guy, your first guy in, or your first money guy in catches a personal windfall of 20 million, 30 million, 50 million. They just shove $5 right back in. They go, I don't care what you do. Here you go. Just go make it happen. And
Yeah.
I don't know that that's the case here, but kind of feels that way.
So the other new company, we do know what they're doing. We know what product they're building. It's called XBOW. I don't know if there's a story behind the name XBOW, but it's an interesting trend. We've seen a lot happening with automation in security, and I mean, there's been breach and attack simulation has been bordering on automated pen testing, you know, and going into CTEM. And now this is web app vulnerability. XBOW autonomously finds and exploits vulnerabilities in 75% of web benchmarks.
Yeah. So they
Sure.
do these things called benchmarks, which are basically like identified goals. What
Like
is your
OAuth
goal?
10.
No, like that's how it operates from what I can understand from what I read on their website. You know, the benchmark might be break a cryptographic CAPTCHA with a
I see.
CBC padding Oracle. Here's the website that has it on it. Go. Right. So the benchmark gives it a little bit of guidance and a little bit of guardrails. And then it goes and uses AI to break down the task and break down, it creates probably, and I don't know this for sure, but my guess is it creates a task tree via AI to create a task tree, which then calls other AI agents to execute additional tasks and break those down tasks into smaller field tasks and eventually rolls this all up into a hopefully successful exploit. So a couple things with this one, and I'm going to butcher his name in case I screw it up. I've met him a few times. Ouija Demore. Oops. Sorry, flash flood here in Raleigh, guys. That's what that beep was. Ouija Demore is the founder and CEO, former founder of Semel, and the creator of Semel. So the guy has mad chops when it comes to actually like static analysis and exploit creation and development. He's also coupled with Nico Weissman, who goes back over 25 years of research. The guy is as good as they come as a cyber researcher. Nico's been around forever. Mad respect from the community for him. So the team is stellar on this one. The concern I have, and the question I have for you guys, because you know how I love to debate these open questions, is where do you draw the line? Back in the day when I first heard of dynamic scanning, DAS tooling, I immediately was like, oh my God, this is a bad idea. And I was wrong. This is a horrible idea. Who's going to buy a tool that actively tries to exploit your site and runs the risk of breaking it, screwing up your database. You know, us pen testers, we do it all manually. So we're make sure that we're safe. We're not going to take anything down. We're not going to break anything. There's no way DAST wins because it's automating that and they can't do it perfectly. They're going to screw it up. This is kind of an AI extreme version of that. And immediately I flashed back to where I was wrong once before. This is a bad idea. This is a horrible idea. You're actively not only exploiting, but creating exploit payloads, buffer overflows. Like when you look at the things that they have on the website, we're not talking about, hey, this is just, can you automate creating a SQL injection by looking at the error codes? This is a full on, like, it doesn't matter where this thing takes you, get in and get me root, get me all the data. And so it's pretty powerful, like extremely powerful. So I immediately have my bristling, oh my God, it's a horrible idea. What if it runs wrong? What if it breaks shit? Like, this is not a good idea. But I was wrong once before. So maybe I should reel that back in. What are your guys' thoughts?
So that's the question with automation in general right now. A lot of the conversations I had at RSA, vendors seem to think that customers are ready to risk breaking things, because the alternative is the bad guys find out first, right? And that's always been a threat, but these days it's hitting much closer to home than it has in the past. And that's what these vendors seem to be betting on, is that at least some of the customers are willing to break some stuff. Chaos engineering is effectively this, right? And building resiliency, like that's what we're hearing about everywhere is look, that's exactly the reason to do this. If you're afraid it's going to break stuff and take down production stuff, like you want to do it first,
Adrian,
yourself,
till it takes down your business, till it takes down your business and costs you hundreds of millions of dollars in the 2 days that it takes you to get your stuff back online because it wiped you out.
Then that means you had absolutely no plan for this before you hit go.
Agreed, but can't we find a safer way to do it than to cost me hundreds of millions of dollars across 48 hours of outage? There's got to be a better way to find it than break shit.
You should probably have a DR BCP plan. You should probably have high availability. You should probably plan for all that stuff.
I agree. You should do all the things Adrian said, especially disaster recovery.
Because anybody can do any of this at any time if it's out on the public internet.
Agreed. The two things that I'll say is that the founding team is extremely smart. This is not their first go around. Nico Wiseman was the CISO at Lyft. They move like millions of people around per day. So like highly scalable, publicly visible application and website. And so I'm sure that these folks have thought about this. The other thing is there are certain points in times where this automated testing, you can do this automated testing with limited potential like blast radius and implications. This is before going live with an application. This is, you could create a mirrored environment of your live app and do the testing there. There are many different ways to mitigate the risk of potentially bringing down your site. What I really like about XBOW, though, is that they conducted tests against 548 benchmarks for known benchmarks of Port, Swigger, and Pentester Labs. But also they fed it 104 novel scenarios, and it still performed extremely high. So it's able to, their engine is able to reason on its own to be able to find the path to root, which is super cool. So when I think about how much more efficient is this compared to a junior pen tester or a senior pen tester, it hit like 75% of the benchmarks or tests that it was fed. I don't think that a junior or even senior pen tester can get 75% of the benchmarks that it's fed. And so in that sense, this is kind of democratizing. There we go. Democratizing web app pen testing. And I think it's super cool. So
totally agree with you, Darwin. Still nervous as hell. Still scares the shit out of me. You know what I would love to see them do? I would like to see them unleash this beast on Black Hat DEF CON CTF. Unleash it on the CTF and say, go. Like, here's the targets. Go exploit. Like, go figure these things out.
Wouldn't surprise me if they did that. That would be a great test of the technologies. Point it at CTFs.
You'd think I'm a marketing guy or something, but if they could do this at DEF CON and let it rip and see what the hit rate would, that would be super cred. Like, you'd get tons of buzz, especially if they hit a high hit rate. What if it won CTF? What if literally one dude walked in there, deployed XBOW and said go, and they won CTF? while drinking and not playing. That would be epic.
That'd be interesting. And you bring up another point. I wonder what the DEF CON CTF will look like this year after all the AI advancements over the past year.
Oh, that's another interesting point. I would love to go check it out this year just for that reason
Shifting
alone.
targets? That could be cool.
Well, applied AI to the offensive side like XBOW, but also, like you just said, applied AI to the defensive side. Yeah. Wild.
Fast forward 5 years, it'll just be AI versus AI.
Totally.
Yeah,
he says that joking. He says it and laughs, and Adrian and I both looked at each other and went, "Yep."
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure DARPA's already done a few of those, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Cool tech. Really, really cool tech.
So stories 4 and 6 are related. So we've got an essay here, a new SaaS security shared responsibility model, and then we've got a blog post from Thinkst basically talking about how they're going about upgrading to the new version of Ubuntu for all their customer instances. So for each, if you're a customer of Thinkst, you get there's a container or an EC2 or something like that, basically running Ubuntu that runs the cloud console for all your Thinkst Canary stuff. And the reason they're related, basically they ran into an issue where they needed support and they were paying for pro support for Ubuntu. But Ubuntu wouldn't help them because they did it through AWS Marketplace, and AWS wouldn't help them because it's not Ubuntu. So this this is more shared responsibility from a not for technical security controls or anything like that, but for managing the products themselves, but for the support side of things. So basically they're just left empty-handed. Neither company they were paying money would help them with the challenges that they had. So it's a good question now, and we're kind of seeing this a lot. Like with Snowflake, is the other reason that I wanted to include these. I think we're starting to see the edges of where the responsibility model is shared, and it's not an edge; it's a chasm. Like there are plenty of places to fall down into, to fall deep down into, in this shared responsibility model, where you're going to assume it's their responsibility and they're assuming it's your responsibility, and turns out nobody's doing it. Nobody's responsible for it.
Adrian, let me play a real stupid question here for the smarter people on this call. Katie, yes, I see. I don't know if you guys caught the little zinger there, but
I did.
Anyways,
I did. I was too slow to catch it,
so I don't react visibly.
All right.
When he says that, it generally means not Katie. So there we go.
No, it 100% means Katie. She's the smart one on the call, and the most articulate. But let's drill this down here. S3 bucket, I leave it unencrypted with wide open auth. Whose fault? In a shared responsibility model, whose fault?
Yours.
Simple question. Is it? Why isn't it hardened and authentication required with two-factor auth by default?
Yeah,
whose fault?
Why did the default suck, right?
Why did the default suck? But I think it's a simple question that doesn't have a simple answer, because anybody can point at anybody else in that moment. And until we figure out how to make things, I guess, more clearly defined from an ownership perspective with regard to security, we'll never get better. And I think that's kind of, and I haven't read this in detail. I just actually bookmarked it to read in detail this essay, because I really think this is an important function as we move forward to more distributed development models, more SaaS and cloud-based development models, pushing things into distributed backends, things like that. It gets more and more a complex problem.
So I think there's a mix of.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Katie.
I was just going to say, I think the problem is we rolled out this idea of shared responsibility model years ago, and then we never touched it again. We just kept looking at the shared responsibility model and saying, these are the lanes. And the issue about, your question here about the misconfiguration, whose fault is it? Well, we never defined what that means. And if you have a stricter control by default, you're going to have people saying, on the one hand, why are you trying to tell me how to do security? This is my responsibility. And then you're going to have the opposite point of view. And it becomes almost like this ridiculous religious war. Now, if you're a security person, you should probably err on the side of more security, but we know that our business partners are going to err on the side of speed, efficiency, and agility.
I don't think it matters where you draw the line. I think where you draw the line is highly irrelevant. I think what matters communication is that the line exists. Here
But
it
we
is.
haven't been,
This
but that
is
was
yours,
my
and this is-
original point. There
that's the
has
problem.
been no communication. It's we have a
Yeah.
model. And then we didn't touch the freaking
Right.
model.
Right. We didn't enforce the line.
Yeah.
Or we didn't
And where I
shift the
says that-
line as need arose, right? Like this
It
problem
doesn't
wasn't as
need to be shifted.
but this problem wasn't as prevalent 15 years ago, right?
We never enforced it. That was the problem. Shifting it wasn't a thing. I mean, we should always readjust it and be smarter about where we're putting it. I agree with you 110%. Let's continue to refine where it exists. But the bigger problem isn't where you draw the line. The bigger problem is saying, here is the line. You have to do this. And if you don't, you're responsible and you could be sued and you're liable. And if this happens, we are, right? It's the communications of it and the enforcement of it that was always been the problem.
Well, it was intentionally
Yeah.
made a little fuzzy because people were scared.
Stop
I
being
think the
scared, people.
challenge is like AWS has over 300 products. You know, the line is chopped up. You know, in some places the line is up here, in some places it's down here, in some places it moves on a monthly basis, and you got to keep up with that. In some places, you're not aware that there needs to be a line in a place. You know, and I think the Okta support site breach is a great example of this. So Okta itself wasn't hacked. It was just the website where people uploaded their support files and they had like a support forum. And they did say in their documentation, don't, take credentials out of HAR files before you upload them. It seems simple, right? Like a bunch of idiots didn't pull credentials out of the HAR files before they uploaded them. So, maybe that's on the customer for not following instructions.
100% it is. That was
So my
clear
question-
definition of the line.
So my question is, okay, like how simple is it to remove credentials from a HAR file? And you look in a HAR file and you just got hundreds and hundreds of variables with random names and just random gobbledygook in the values for those.
Mhm.
So unless you're a developer of the app, it's an impossible problem. Like I just took our own app that we use for managing the podcast, logged into it, saved as a HAR file. No idea which of those fields keeps me logged in. Nothing
And
said
that's-
OAuth on it. Nothing was telling
And
me
that's
what the
to Katie's point. That's to Katie's point, is that the line does need to be adjusted when we find issues in the line. And
Right.
what you
So
found is an issue in where that line exists. So I'm not suggesting we shouldn't continuously adjust the line and make it better and improve it. But
Yeah.
what I do think where the bigger gap is expectation setting and communication. Because even in
Right.
that example, Adrian, even 100% agree with you across the board. But had it been overt that you must do this or you're liable, like, it's very clear. It's irrelevant that the line was there in that moment. That's what it was. You were responsible for this. You effed it up.
So that problem still exists, right? Like there's not a tool out there that makes it easy to remove
Right.
credentials from a HAR file. Like you literally have to have somebody who understands the code of the app, and that's not always accessible. So this is an unsolved problem. Cloudflare, 1Password, and BeyondTrust got it wrong. And they uploaded HAR files with credentials, and that's how whoever hacked into Okta got back into them. So, like, and clearly, they stopped the attacks once the attacks hit them. So, these guys aren't bad at security. I don't think. I think provably they're pretty decent at security, but they couldn't follow Okta's instructions. So, to me, that kind of falls back on Okta. Like, okay, you just asked the customer to you put responsibility on them. That's not reasonable.
Yeah, but shouldn't the customer have said, I don't know how to do this, show me, or I won't do it? Like, there was clear definition of what that responsibility is. Therefore, it's the responsibility of the customer. This is your responsibility. You own this. If you can't figure out how to do it, please let us know, and maybe we can adjust that responsibility. But
think about this from the other perspective. I'm Okta. Don't I want to check and see if all my customers are giving me credentials? Don't I want to know if
Sure,
I'm
100%.
storing all my customers' credentials in plain text on this web server?
Mhm.
And don't I want to engage the customer if they're if 100% of them are not following instructions and doing it wrong.
100%, yes. We needed to adjust the line, and Okta was stupid. Yes.
Yeah.
But I still think it was very clearly the mistake of the people that uploaded it. If you can't figure out how to do it, or you're going to choose to ignore the directions, that's your responsibility. That's your fault. If it was a clearly written policy and designated this is what we expect, and you didn't do it or couldn't ask for help, that's on you. Now, yes, Okta made all sorts of mistakes, setting the line there, not moving the line, not adjusting the line. Like, they made their own mistakes. And that's to Katie's point of maybe we should adjust that line. But if you communicate ownership and responsibility, you tell somebody what they have to do, and for whatever reason they don't do it.
And I think it's an industry education issue too, that, you know, people generally aren't thinking of OAuth keys, you know, and the kinds of keys that leave us logged into web apps as credentials, as plain text credentials. Like, if we called it a password, maybe they would have stopped and said, "Whoa, wait a minute! Like, how do I get this thing out of here before I?"
Sure.
But because we call it, you know, credentials or OAuth keys or something like that, we somehow think they're less important.
Yeah, I am going to deep dive this article. I love Russ Spittler from Nudge is the author, and I'm going to deep dive it. I think it's a really cool thing that we need to continue to iterate on. Clearly, the three of us can debate this for hours, so it's a rich tapestry to talk about.
All right, let's see. Yeah, so you know, we've kind of, you know, we've talked about Snowflake, and again, you know, so same issue with Snowflake, right? Like, Snowflake didn't get hacked, but somebody decided to focus on companies they can get into, cred stuffing, on Snowflake. And boy, is Snowflake's name combined with the word breach a lot in the headlines, and that's not great for them. So again, like, they didn't do anything wrong here. You know, but at the same time, you know, looking over at Salesforce a couple of years ago, we actually had somebody from Salesforce on talk about what it took for them to convince them to enforce MFA for all customers. Like, you can't turn off MFA. There's no option to do that anymore in Salesforce because they enforced it. At least not for certain types of logins. Like, you can still create API keys, OAuth keys, stuff like that. But I wonder if Snowflake is not thinking, you know, maybe we should have forced our customers to do more because this looks really bad for us.
Yeah, this is the moving the line thing that Katie was talking about. Exactly right, right? Now, actually, who knows? Because I don't know if the line was super clear on Snowflake where they're like, you must do ABC 1, 2, 3 to harden. Assuming that was clearly stated in documentation and it was the user's screw up, Katie's got a great point. Should Snowflake now adjust and go, hey, we screwed this up. It's not in the right spot. We're going to move the line back here. We're going to own this piece of the security. We're going to make sure it's hard, and we're going to force it, right? So I think Katie's absolutely right. It's about adjusting where the line lies.
We have to always, if you look back to, you know, your pillars of cybersecurity, your pillars of, you know, what we're supposed to be doing as practitioners, nobody would say, set your incident response plan and then leave it for the next 5 years. Just 5 years, right? Well, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. Okay, stop raising your hand.
I'm kidding. You shouldn't.
But you know you shouldn't. But then if you look into it, if you actually talk to practitioners, if you actually ask people what's going on, you know that they're not doing these things as regularly as they should. Now we can talk about all of the reasons why. And it's not easy. I'm not going to be, you know, grumpy old lady here and be like, we should just do all this. It's easy to say, hard to do, but the reality.
Be grumpy. Leave that.
Yeah, sorry.
Exactly. Adrian and I are the grumpy ones.
I don't want to take your job away, but the reality is, it's easy to say, hard to do, but it is one of those things where if we did it more, and if we stop, I am going to say this, if we stop trying to look so busy and actually focus a little bit more, then we would have time to reprioritize and focus on certain things like this. Because I think there is a certain amount of, we want to look busy in cybersecurity that goes on every day. And I mean, you can see it on social.
Katie said cybersecurity needs to get its shit together.
You can see it on social media. I mean, honestly, I don't go on social media that much, but when I do, the amount of posts from people, it's like, oh my God, did you even have like an hour block in your day where you focused? Really?
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, let's be honest, I've probably just made 5,000 new enemies, but if we focused a little bit more and really got down to it, we'd have time to do things like review our IR plans, review our policies, review our procedures, really figure out the things we need to do instead of pushing it off till tomorrow or bitching on social media that we have too much to do. Okay, that was ranty. All right. We should close this up. We should close this up.
All right, everybody get off. Everybody get off. Get off Katie's lawn right now.
It sounded very cathartic. All right. Yeah, a few more things here. We got a few AI things. We've mostly avoided it this week. You're welcome. But one AI indigestion piece. There's some. So AI detectors aren't all that reliable. I've heard. But what these for this paper, what these researchers did is they just looked at words that weren't common until AI came out, and they were just looking at the frequency of words. And certain words just suddenly got way more common once people started generating stuff with AI. So you can go get that list off of their GitHub. They've published it. There's a ton of words on there. Some of them are useful. Some of them are not if you're trying to figure out if something's written by AI. I think in general, after you've used it for a while, you can spot it. Like the human brain is very good at spotting patterns. And I think that's going to be the human brain, like your kind of gut from reading something. You have to use it on a regular basis, though. Otherwise, you don't have the two different data inputs. I think your brain is probably the best thing to spot this. I don't think we'll ever have a piece of software that does a really great job at it because it's going to evolve over time.
Yeah.
And you can also
I think it can be manipulated.
Right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can manipulate the hell out of it too, right? So one of the things that I've done with my AI chatbots is I've fed it years of my writing to train it to write like me, right? Not necessarily from a content perspective. I still prompt it on the content, but as far as the words it chooses are the words that I've chosen over the last X number of years of writing. So you can actually kind of get it away from this. But I think what they're saying is like people just being lazy going to ChatGPT and going, hey, write this for me.
Yeah, I actually do the opposite of you, Tyler. I will feed it a question to spark ideas for content.
I do that too. Yeah.
And then it'll spit it out, and then I go, okay, all right. Because sometimes thinking of what to write could take 2 to 3 hours. Sure. And I just want to cut that off because I'm overthinking it. Yeah. So I'll ask a question, it'll spit out something, and I go, wow, that's written really poorly. But I could write something really good on this. And you can definitely see, like Adrian said, those patterns. Like,
oh, for sure.
I would never write like that. That doesn't sound like Katie.
But Katie, if you feed it like your last X number of years of content, when you do that same prompting, it actually comes out way closer to the way you would say it, and you can copy paste a lot more of it.
And then all I have to do is borrow Adrian's mouse jiggler, and then I can sit here drinking tea and eating bonbons and get paid.
I love it. Sign me up. I want that program.
So the other thing found, and I think we covered this in a previous week, but 404 Media, one of the journalists there created their own news website and powered it with AI. And one of the things that they found was that it will not take a hard stance on something. No. If you have a strong opinion somewhere in your writing and you pass it through something like ChatGPT, it will water down the strength of your argument. It will water down your opinion. It'll take the most middle of the road path it can.
Well,
and it's funny you say that, Adrian.
I was going to say clearly then I can never use it for writing because I always have a strong opinion and everybody would know if I had a vanilla type.
You want a strong opinion on a rating. Yeah. Go ahead, Tyler.
You know what's funny? I was just going to say that is exactly, and I hadn't thought of it until you just articulated it. That is the one thing that pisses me off when I try to write with ChatGPT helping me, is that I don't feel like it, because I am a very strong opinionated person when I write and when I speak, and it never gets there. It never makes a call, and that just irks the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And I have tried to go in and put my articles in and say, make this snarkier, make this more sarcastic, and it won't. And I'm even telling it to, and it's my writing.
Right.
So sad.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just how it's been designed, I think.
Yeah.
It's so sad. I guess we just have to keep doing our own jobs.
All right. And as we wrap up, we've got a squirrel story here, and I need each of you to click the link on story number 10.
Oh, no.
All right, let's
Here
do
we
it.
go.
I'm afraid to click start.
Oh, look, it's 1992 again.
No, I don't want to click it. What if it actually screws my drive up?
Click it.
There it goes.
Is it Tetris? What's going on?
Have you ever defragmented a hard drive?
Oh yeah,
on an old
that's the
Windows?
the old hard drive sound when it's just whirring and going back and forth. The arms going like crazy.
Yeah, the arm over the platter.
Yeah.
So a bit of nostalgia for anybody who's ever defragmented fat hard drive back in the day on Windows 3.1 or Windows 98 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
It's defrag98.com recreates the entire experience for you down to the sounds of the hard drive as it moves data around from different clusters.
Yes. And it 100% would have taken about this long to do my 20 megabyte hard drive back in the day.
There's some things that are lovely from the past that can stay in the past.
Yes, this is one of them.
Yes, absolutely. If you want to see it go fast, click on settings and go down to drive F, because F has 8 IOPS instead of 1, 2, or 3, and it'll complete much more quickly.
Why?
You have
The
4
fake
different
fragmenting will go more quickly.
You can put this right next to the dot matrix printer sounds that we used to use too.
Oh God!
How
And the
cute is
modem
this?
noises.
Oh, I'm gonna
And the
start to
modem
twitch.
noises.
Stop it! Please stop it. I used to
And
have
the
a
PBX
roommate.
noises, the blue box noises. We used to do all those.
I used to have a roommate who would dial up his computer like 12 times a day.
Oh my God!
I don't know why he had it so loud, but he did.
Do you know you can turn the sound off on that?
Yeah.
You don't have to have.
Yeah, and he would turn it up as
You
loud
can mute
as.
it.
Oh, so awful.
I'm not going to do it on the show. I can still whistle the correct pitches of the modem.
Oh no!
Because
Please.
I used to practice. I used to hand dial the phone when I was bored and see if I could whistle the correct pitches to get the other end modem to complete its handshake. I can still whistle those pitches. I still have them ingrained in my memory.
I can hear it in my head.
Yeah, I got them right in my head right now.
No, don't do it. Don't do it.
No, I'm not doing it. Not doing it live. Don't worry. Not doing it.
Love it. Love it. All right. That's all we got for today. I'm going to be in Brazil for the next 29 days starting tomorrow.
Ooh.
And I'm going to try and do the show from there.
I'm jealous, buddy.
So I'm kind of
jealous.
pseudo on vacation, I'm independent. So like there is no like vacation. I mean, so I could have people step in for me, but I'm pretty excited about some of the upcoming shows and some of the folks that we're doing interviews with. So yeah, I'm going to try and make them. We'll see if I can rustle up some bandwidth. I think most of the places we're going to be in, save one. One is a remote village, but Fortaleza looks like it should be just fine on bandwidth. It's a big city.
So for those of you that are just listening to the show today, please tune in video wise, because maybe we can convince Adrian to give us some outdoor scenery while he's down there.
Yeah, I would love to do that. There's actually an ASW that I did earlier this year. We were talking about one of the talks I was giving, and I did it outside here in Orlando, and it's all just palm trees behind me.
All right, let's get that. Let's try to get you to do that.
From behind the house, and I was just sweating for the second half of it. I stayed on for the news segment. It was awful. Yeah.
Bring a fan, folks. We're going to want to see this live in the next few weeks here. So enjoy your pseudo vacation, Adrian.
I appreciate it. All right. So thanks so much to Darwin. He had to drop off, and to you, Katie and Tyler, for joining me today. And a big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We'll see you next week.